All right, hey, what's up? This is Not So Jared Froll 23. You can call me Jared, and I believe you have seen some of my comments on many Black Pill adjacent videos and Manispherian videos regarding looks, dating, money, and status. This is now my contribution to what we can call the Black Pill community, and I want to share my story with acne, henceforth the title of this video. My acne story, trials and tribulations of suffering cystical hormonal acne in my 20s. This will be a part of a series that I call Notes on a Black Pill. This is the first video on August 2, 2025. Hope you enjoy it. The agenda for today is, first of all, what is cystical hormonal acne and what can cause this? Mostly a very brief overview, as far as I can tell and far as I can recall, by basically my own accord and by my own recollection of what is happening. My teenage experience with pimples, given that this is not my first rodeo with acne at all. My current experience, as is, the evolution of the condition, which I documented very thoroughly to to motivate myself and have a mental modi, which now I'll share to the world. Final thoughts on this and references, if any. All right, first of all, what is cystical hormonal acne? What can cause this? Simply put, the pimples can hurt it press on, or it grew in very inconspicuous places. The main difference compared to other levels of severity of acne, as far as I can tell, is basically that the pimples hurt. Given that a cyst, you have heard the term before, it's a pustule, a nodule, if I'm not mistaken, that basically can hurt. May not hurt, but it looks horrible, or sometimes can hurt, so you can think that this is a triple whammy on my condition. And because we're talking about the black pill and the way that looks matter, there's no discussion that this doesn't affect the way you look and hence for your chances on dating. Acne on average is caused by a bacteria known as C. acnes, which leverages the abnormal skin of a patient, which is predisposed to, first of all, sweating a lot, which I do have, greasy skin, which I had before, very open pores, which also alters the condition. Other things, as many guys rightfully call out and rightfully pinpoint, is bad diet and the whey protein ingestion, which is something I want to focus on as a main, of one of the main things you should consider if you want to take the self improvement route for this. If untreated, as we'll see, it can lead to severe acne scars, which involve other rounds of treatments besides the medication, which we'll discuss. In a more thorough explanation, I guess, at a more formal medically approach, basically we have the sebaceous glands, and given that the skin is the main organ, the biggest organ we have in our bodies, of course, it has certain conditions that we should be aware of. But the main defect compared to the ideal skin, if you will, is the fact that our sebaceous glands, if you're acne prone, tend to secrete more, well, sebum on average, aka the grease that you see. Henceforth, sometimes many people with acne tend to have a lot of very noticeable greasy, glowy skin. But just there is a difference between the glowy, I guess, hormonally beautiful skin and basically being acne prone, that your pimples and pores are extremely open, more than it should be. Given that they produce a lot of sebum, it's this creates the perfect environment for bacteria to grow. Specifically speaking, the the aforementioned Cutibacterium acnes, which of course leverages this and creates a pore that it's sealed, which eventually, depending on the condition, as we can see, sometimes it can become a blackhead, which is an open comedon with dead skin cells, aka basically gunk, aka dead matter, dead biological matter, and the other ones, which is white blood cells attacking an infection as a response, which aka is the pimples with pus, which of course looks, as we know, objectively horrible. And at least in my experience, like as you could see right now, the more severe, or at least the more debilitating pimples you have are the ones the which are papules and pustules. And in my case, given that my cyclical hormonal acne is extreme, it's very extreme on the level of pain, you can guess that this pimples hurt a lot. But the point of the matter is that the skin that I have, it's very abnormal to my level of acne. Excuse me, to this bacteria, and henceforth that my body cannot regulate sebum secretion. Of course, that exacerbates the problem. Besides, of course, genetics, so on and so forth. The point of the matter is that in my case, and thanks to the black pill now, in retrospect, is that I was predisposed by this. So, of course, that explained a lot of things that now we go as my teenage experience with pimples, specifically speaking, me as a pubescent adolescent. Simply put, it was extremely horrible, as we will explain. As described here, my pubescent changes seem to have altered my skin barrier to no avail. A lot of bodily hair. I'm smelly and sweaty, so that's a very bad combination. Besides that, and thanks to the blue pill, the tips that just have a shower, in my case, apply to the extreme. Given that I have a very potent odor, which is a topic that I want to focus on a different video. Given that this is something it's it's understood, but I believe not in the way that I experienced it, which I believe that would be very useful. Of course, a big tendency to have irritated skin, which also I knew it beforehand. And of course, the severe cystic acne on top of the facial hair, which you can guess that a very horrible thing to have. Uh, One thing to note that is because I'm from Mexico, on most middle school, they tend to be very rigid, very strict on their standards of presentation. And frankly, it's very stupid. And that, of course, I believe had a huge effect on my self-esteem. Given that I look at this point in my life like basically like a nerd, the whole stereotype, I have big ears to an extent, but the point of the matter is that compounded by the Phalo effect and the horn effect that we already know, my acne was basically the final nail in the coffin of my sexual market value towards women. Although I was relatively tall compared to the average, and I also got almost scouted by the school's volleyball team, I just felt that I wasn't in place. And I believe that this, because of my severity of my image and henceforth the lack of bullying of others rather only than my own self, ironically enough, was one of the things that affected my self-esteem greatly. Of course, besides the romantic prospects, which I will talk about more detail in future videos, hopefully. The point of the matter is that my self-esteem was on the low and I didn't like it. I was previously describing, my body tended to react very, very violently to the pain, and I described it in many comments on different Black Hill videos or anything regarding your bodily image. Is the fact that besides just dating, like you really feel it. Like sometimes my pimples were on the back of my scalp. And imagine getting your hair cut because it was basically enforced by my school, which you damn Americans have. Honestly, I envy you for that. You had a lot of luck. Use your hair to your advantage. Not like me, which I didn't have a chance regardless. Point of the matter is that imagine getting your haircut done and just feeling the fucking extreme pain. Besides me having over already a tendency to have very irritated skin, imagine like getting your haircut and just feeling like it's ripping off your pimples. Like, dude, that's just something that no one should feel. Like, okay, you can call me out on this one. That yeah, maybe it wasn't that severe, but for me, it just it was very, very, very damaging. Like you don't believe how painful it was, or even getting you sleep because of the pain. I mean, literally, because my pimples, thanks to the pressure, by basically like try to get into the position of sleep, which in this moment in my life was basically on the sides, mostly in my from left to right side, it just hurt it. It's just something that I don't wish to upon my worst enemy. And henceforth, regarding my prospects in dating, I vividly remember one thing that I had because some pimples also began to appear almost on the contour of my upper lip. That how would a girl would want to how I would like a girl to even kiss me, by oh, even if only I knew. Anyways, the point of the matter is the fact that my pimples at this point, whether big or small, hurted. Now imagine like trying to get a kiss of a girl and then it will hurt me. That's not a good thing to live for. Like even when I was ironically enough, very blue pill if you want to call it that, I knew that it kind of mattered because it affected my self-esteem. but I didn't know that it had, of course, a very big implication on dating, and that was years afterwards. Only thing that I can generally attest that it was that helped me carry on, or at least to alleviate the pain, is my connection to music. I learned to play the guitar and became very proficient at it. And as one of the images, so here I was basically a fan of grunge, and currently now a lot of new metal. So music is a big part of my identity, which is one of the things I'll never sacrifice, not even for men or women whatsoever. Which, of course, given the topics they discuss in the music, I related deeply to this. So that helped me out tremendously, at least as a third base, if you will. And now with my current experience with acne, I ironically enough uh, can give an indirect cause of this, of my acne, thanks to the craze of the self-improvement. Let's get back in time to 2022. At least in Mexico, we basically almost got out of the full, out of the lockdowns, and everything was try to adhere to normal. A very interesting experience in itself. Yeah. Full disclosure, I got the vaccine. I got vaccinated. Wow, wow. I'm a part of globalists and so on and so forth. Regardless, the point of the matter is that I had this in a lot of time to reflect on my stance on life, and thanks to the videos of Code Studio, Face and LMS. I think I saw one video so of Inkwell TV announced Rehab Room, the first videos of Weed Waffles, and other experiences that I will talk about in other videos regarding how I guess, if you will, how I got involved on the manosphere indirectly or directly. So the point of the matter is that now I knew that it looks matter. In this point in my life, my acne was basically on remission by itself, as I will explain, as I explained before. Um, my acne was spurted out very violently, but thanks to my parents being a little conscious about my image, they also basically forced me to undertake Accutane. But because I was basically a teenager, I didn't care. But now I did care because I knew that it mattered that much to my objective, getting women, which I believe there's no point in not discussing or at least be honest about it. I started as Spirit stated, taking my image seriously, and entered a CrossFit gym. I know, a meme in itself, and lost a ton of weight on the first 3 months, which I can attest to the claim of rehab that the main improvement should be made on the first 3 months. Fully agree. I noticed that I had full good facial bone structure, of course, without disclosing and basically image doxing myself, which I don't feel comfortable right now to doing so. Is that a fact that I have a lot of sharp facial features, a good brow ridge, basically the stereotypical warrior skull. I'll say that now my only aesthetically fixed my little bottom lip, but regardless, it compensates a lot with the front profile. Regardless, it has got me very good results in it itself. But at this point in my life, I didn't know that I was going to make the biggest mistake in my self improvement journey it was taking whey protein, which I didn't know that it could detonate my dormant predisposition to acne. Because at this point, as I stated a couple seconds ago, I didn't know that it had a very direct correlation to detonate acne again. And because basically at this point, I thought it was already gone forever for good. Like, how else would have I known better? I mean, at this point, also it was a recommendation of my nutritionist, so I didn't know better. After, of course, I panicked. The last straw for me is that made me decided to fix it is that I saw a big ass cyst on my on the rightmost side of my clavicle, on the front clavicle. It killed my confidence overnight, as you can see, on a very loose representation with stock images. And the photo of Lelouch basically giving, Lelouch Lamberth from Goat Geese giving the crazy eye look of the typical crazy anime eye look is exactly how I felt seeing my body. Like I could tolerate to some extent the pimples on my face. You can say that I was coping, but the one that I genuinely broke, like I couldn't tolerate further, is the big pimple in my cyst. That was something, excuse me, pimple on my clavicle. That was something unprecedented for me. And at this point, I was ironically feeling more confident by my image because I was already gaining the benefits of looks maxing unironically. Discovering that it had good potential underneath the fat, it boosted up, but this dragged it down to the bottom. It made me focus on fixing this medical anomaly that I had in my body. seriously, as Rehab Room stated in a few recent videos ago. I think it was on on July. No bitching out this one. Fully committed to the craft, fully committed to the ordeal. And also keep in mind that it was basically 3 months afterwards that I basically took the summer of 2022 full logo for to improve and going to the beach, maybe get girls, see some looks, try to ironically try to approach women because I felt a very noticeable change. But I also at this point, you need to be mindful that I also learned that looks mattered more than personality. So of course this killed my confidence because objectively speaking, I knew thanks to Code Studio now by that video about the importance of of your basically your facial texture that it mattered and it would be a big hinder to my attractiveness. Of course, this kills my confidence overnight, so I said, fuck it. I will do this for real. I'll fix it. No hesitation, no backing out. There's so much to gain in my case, and I did. In this case, I'm still undergoing Accutane to acne remission, given that I'm currently undergoing some laser skin resurfacing treatments. So far, I got very good results. Besides the main side effect of chapped lips, which in my case and in my experience, admittedly, is very manageable. Of course, it requires a different routine that you may not be accustomed to, but at this point, it's a very small cost that I'm willing to pay for to unironically participate on the dating market. And that's one thing you must consider if you have acne and feel that you're like in that on the limbo, that decision making limbo, where you feel that if it's gonna be worth it. I'm more of a guy that tends to experiment with it, so like I know I understand there's just a finite amount of time you're on each of us on each lives that we are living right now. By definition, no one is eternal. So I can understand why this may be a very transcendental decision for the better and for the worse. Uh, but anyways, this is why I wanted to make this video to show that it might and hopefully it possibly can help you for the better. And as a full disclosure, as we could see with basically a lot of boxes of Accutane that I have, which in Mexico is sell as isotrenoin in between these two brands. I think is uh, Bastunin and Neotrex, but basically they're isotrenoin, 10 and 20 milligrams respectively. That's the cap in Mexico. My cost of treatment so far, basically the accumulation of all all of the investment was from 2022 to 2025. The most important one, of course, is Accutane 20 milligrams, 30 pills for basically one each day. At least for my severity of acne, it was around 450 US dollars. The terms appointment is up until now is $200. Now it's basically subsidized because I became basically their most loyal and most disciplined patient. So that's a plus, if you will. And laser skin treatments, of course, these are non-negotiable. These are actually the ones that I invested the most money off, which is $1,600 at this point. Uh, Give or take, it is basically now almost 220 $22,050, which I know it sounds like absolutely nothing for the American point of view of your salary and wages, but for a Mexican guy like me that's almost basically making $300 per week on a job that basically is regarding my degree, which is computer systems engineering. I know basically both like computer science, but this in my experience, computer science and a more pragmatical approach for the third world country I am. But so far, I've been in a very good place right now, and I've seen very noticeable results that I'm going to share right now. So far, I can tell you my start approach, and that's the main thing you must be aware of, as you can see in the photos. I started in September 2022, where I basically put myself and disciplined myself to take a photo every month to show the results, and also as my case that you will see, which I guess it will be, I guess to some extent conscious of my reaction when I see the lowest of the lows. It's quite documented within the internet. Besides, the black pill stuff, that Accutane, as in the medical prescription for battling acne, henceforth, basically minimizing, if not eradicating, the persistent pimples on your face. if hopefully that's the only place you have them. Not sometimes bodybuilders have them thanks to the amount of ingestion of testosterone, the trenbolone and stuff that dispels their hormones to well battle their bodily acne. In this case, I began to in September 2022, and you see the progression towards the purge. As you could see, my acne wasn't that as severe. Also, I believe that was the poor photo that I took, but whatever. And in October 22, you see in October 2022, you begin to see that my pimples begin to show. Also, as a main note to observe is the fact that depending on the side of my cheeks, you can see that sometimes you see more pitted scars, as you could see. This is also a very big remnant of my years with my first tribulation of acne. In my case, when I was very young, I was naive. I didn't eat better. I thought we just my diet. I didn't work out. Even today, it doesn't work out for me. I did anything, wash my face every time, and I just did what I could with what I had in information. My parents knew better, at least to an extent. So it's quite ironical enough that I got lucky that my parents, mostly my mom, was more aware about my looks and helped me out, which I'm thankful for. My dad was a little bit more like, I guess, very much macho in that aspect, but I don't blame him too. And I mean, it's quite customary in Mexico. Many guys, or many women for that matter, don't care about the looks. So that's a new precedent for me. But as you can see, the pitted scars, besides the resurgence of more severe lesions of my pimples, of course, hurted my self-esteem. But given that I at this point I knew that what I was going to deal with, and to an extent, knowing that I had the potential to look chatty, if you will, like finally making my dream of getting the girls that I want, you ought to know how motivated I was, or lack thereof, if any. November 2022, again, a very poor profile, but at this you could see also the severity of the scarring too, besides the pimples. And in my case, at least in my experience, and you will see, the pimples always tended to appear on within the connection of the brow ridge and my eye area, which is on top of the zygoma, aka the cheekbones. So that was one of the places where I had very deep scars, and because I actually popped the pimples there because those were the ones that were the most hurtful in my experience. Uh, I guess positively enough, my sweet spot for putting acne in remission to the point that it's basically non unnoticeable at this point is around 6 months of 20 milligrams of Accutane daily. September 2022, it began to show up a little bit less harshly, so mostly on the cheeks, but it began to stop in January 2023, which is, in my case, January is my birthday. So I guess that was a good, if you will, a very good birthday gift in my opinion. And now in February 2023, and we see basically almost a lot of no noticeable cystis whatsoever, besides a little bit of redness, derivated by the severity of my acne. At this point, from August, excuse me, from March to April 2023, the the at this point I don't we nor myself and my dermatologist see any noticeable improvement, so we thought it was case closed. And of course, by my dermatologist's recommendation, we stopped the Accutane treatment to check the reaction, to stop basically hurting my liver in this case, which is of course understandable. The reason why it works, Accutane in general, is because it basically cuts your sebum production. By definition, a very fundamental fundamental feature of your body to have. You can guess that it has very extreme conditions inside of you and outside of you. And the one that I wanted is the outside, not the inside, but whatever. At this point, as I stated before, I basically took whatever I could, and this was the only option that I had, if any. This happened during an internship, if you will, at the UCSD. Yes, that UCSD, the University of California, San Diego, and you can guess how that ended. We can see now that through July and August, and arguably my worst point in my acne journey, from a black hole perspective is this part specifically. September 2023 was basically my lowest of lows. What I noticed it was way worse than before. At this moment, limesicline is prescribed because we thought that now my acne could be controlled with antibiotics that work out, as we could see. And my acne was that severe that in September it came back worse than ever, as we could see. Now I had, but now I had, if you will, the fortune of knowing what I need to do. But just just giving a more personal opinion on this. At this point of September, this is where I was thrown back again when I was a teenager. At this point I'm 20, 22 years old in my life, and this just reminded me of my worst years of my life. As I stated before, I was invalid, so I guess that's a plus. But I outbodied myself. But now more than ever, because I knew that this would matter if I wanted to get the ladies. And for context, there was a very cute girl that I find very attractive. She looked very model-esque, like the profile of Emma Watson, and she had like very squinty eyes, I guess Asian eyes guys, but she looked very pretty, and I thought we could kick it. Of course, this fucking hurt my self-esteem because I knew that this will, if you will, scare her away because of my lack of genetic prowess. And this hurted like hell because I knew I had the bone structure, like I had the baseline, if you will, I had the content, but the packaging, aka the marketing of it, was horrible. Look at my skin. Don't tell me this is attractive. This is not. But the thing is, I couldn't complain because I knew what it needed to be done again. Of course, my dermatologist recognized the, I guess if you will, a mistake, but it was prescribed again. As I stated before, I didn't get any mad because I mean I knew it was like this is at this point my fourth time in my life being prescribed Accutane, like consistently. So I said, sure. And as you could see, again, Accutane is prescribed and my body reacts positively against acne and henceforth positively for the treatment. As you can see in October, the pimples began to swell a little, and the severity becomes less and less. As you can see, there's a sweet spot within the last months where you just a lot of redness rather than a lot of just actual like noticeable pimples, which is a very good thing in my opinion. Again, at this point, if I'm not mistaken, I already been undergoing some laser skin resurfacing treatments, so it's also compounded by the fact. So if you also notice the photos that it looks that I got something done, it's because of that. Don't even get me wrong, they hurt even with anesthesia. But as I stated before, they, thanks to Lux Maxine, thanks to the Black Hole, thanks to the Cove Studio, thanks about facial aesthetics, I had the, if you will, the mental fortitude, the willingness. My will was willing, if you will, to undergo, if you will, the blood, sweat, and tears regarding my facial improvements. Because as you see, I had the baseline. The jawline is noticeable. Maybe as I stated before, my bottom lip looks weird or ethnic, if you will. I mean, what can I do? Like, it's what I got. I'm not gonna complain just because my upper lip, bro. It's just stupid. Like, I gotta do what I got, and I have a very good baseline from the get go. Only problem is my acne, which from what I been presenting is very thick, at least manageable enough to be on full remission, which for me it's a huge plus and a cost that I'm willing to bear forever as far as I can live. Around February from 2024, I get hired at college, so it helped. Of course, that helps to ease the payment because at this point most of the costs were subsidized by my parents. Thank God for that. Thank you, parents, if you see this. Thank you, mom, dad. Thank you, dad. So, and you also see that the severity, the lesions, because I also like underwent other treatments. On one, would you say, a radius, I got injected in my cheeks, helped out tremendously too. That was basically free. Uh, but yeah, as you could see, the lesions became less and less severe. And now, starting April, basically I don't serve any heavy nodule whatsoever, which I stated before. For me, that's a huge plus in my opinion. By my dermatologist's recommendation, the Accutane pill dosage is now every 4 days. Given that we are basically now in full remission, and we know that I can basically cannot stay out of the pill. Of course, now the dosage is less aggressive, if you will. Again, I mean, I don't mind at this point. Like, if this is the price to pay to unironically get the attention from the opposite sex, aka getting women, getting female validation, as the late base escort cell said on his video that I re-uploaded on my channel. I mean, what else could I ask for? Now I'm just focusing on the laser scar procedures, which I stated before. Those are the only ones, I guess, to an extent, hard looks maxing that I'm willing to undertake. It hurts like hell, I gotta admit, even with anesthesia. But believe me, one thing, if I ever recommend, if to please do not pick your pimples because of this. You wouldn't know. If I would know better, man. Like, if I would know that the more pitted your scars, the more, I guess, the more horrid the scarring is, the more hurtful the laser skin treatment will be. And of course, the severity of the pain will be less the more healed your skin is, aka the more even the texture is. So please take it from my experience. Do not pick your pimples because you will save a lot of money. I mean, in my case, what can I do? I mean, I'm not gonna go back in time and suffer it again. Bullshit. I'm not doing that. But as my final thoughts, as you could see, acne can be a very debilitating on one's own self-esteem, and of course, courtship with the opposite sex. As explained before, and now I have more positive reactions from the opposite sex. I guess for some trans women too, because I kind of look apart. I don't know if that's a good thing. I guess it is. But anyways, but yeah, even from a type, mollusk tier women, which I find very attractive. It feels self-endearing, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. Will, of course, help me out to uh, carry it on as far as I can get. And I highlighted this in red for the same reasons that I explained before. Do not take whey protein if you are acne prone. Do not repeat my mistake. Please, and if you do, please bear in mind my experience, because believe me, you're gonna save a lot of time, effort, and money, and a lot of mental strain if you're not willing to undertake acne. God forbid the severity and the painfulness of my acne. And I state it again. I'll state it now. I'll state it before. I'll state it again. Please don't pick your pimples. You're gonna save a lot of time, effort, and money too on the long run. If it would have been for me that I just needed to undertake Accutane, nothing more, I would have done it, but I didn't because I didn't know better. But now you know. And again, given that this medication, as I stated before, basically cuts one of your most fundamental features of your body, this is a last resort option because of the heavy toll on your body, specifically speaking, your liver, and of course your dermis. Henceforth, you need to basically cover yourself in a lot of sunscreen, and of course, and if you can, evade sunlight. Other things to note that given this, you might also likely have a vitamin D deficiency. So that's something to discuss. Doing your blood work too happens. So, I mean, those, I guess, supplementary routines, if you will, habits, must be taken seriously because you're playing with your health. Of course, beauty is health, we know that, but like strictly speaking, like in the case of the severity of the lesions, it's also useful to, I guess, have some time for yourself. But take Accutane as a last resort option. This shouldn't I shouldn't be left unsaid that this is not a game. You're playing with your health, so take it wisely and diligently. It's one of those things that I wouldn't wish to take, but here I am today speaking to you because I have no other option. And again, just to remind you that this is not your fault. It's most likely it's genetics. As you could see, I had the genetics of my facial angularity, but a very bad genetic tendency for my skin. What can I do besides what? Complain, cry? At least I want to take something about it. Regardless, if you under these conditions that I had, I understand you, and I deeply am sorry for you. I have nothing more to say. but you have the opportunity to finance your this the journey that if you're willing, hopefully, if I convinced you, I just can say God, good luck and Godspeed. Be honest, if you're going to do it for women, it's totally fine. I understand the point. It's enticing to get attention from the opposite sex or anything that you are attracted to. So that's a good or bad thing depending on how you look at it. But if people treat you better, you ought to know what you're gonna do. Take my experience for what it is, but never take it full against yourself. Yeah, most at this point, I believe everybody understands that if you're very extremely overweight and very very obese, that's physically your fault. Of course, yeah, we understand that he has some genetic predispositions, but most of the times it just stopping eating. But that would be extremely disrespectful. Yeah, if I don't understand your perspective, in my case too, given that acne compared to other places that I've been is the only thing that I needed to fix. But it is one of many cases that hopefully can be useful to you to understand how it is. But at the end of the day, it was like it wasn't my fault either. I wouldn't wish to be born with everything that I have but acne. And finally, as this closing note is the reference that I had for the main finding in my experience for whey protein and its connection. It's very positive correlation with acne, with the acne condition. Regardless for that, I thank you and stay tuned for more.